Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Autobiology, the podcast where learning a little biology now can help you live, I think, a better life both inside and out, right? Let's maintain beauty both on the inside and outside. And today I have on, honestly, one of my heroes. I met Tonya Winders recently, and we found out that we have a very connected background. Tanya is the president and CEO of the Allergy and Asthma Network. And having worked in asthma and allergy in the past when I was with Mylan for EpiPen training, I know a lot about this area and a lot of the controversies that surround it, not only within the medication space, but also the diagnosis space. And, you know, what are moms to do in these situations? And I think that if you are a mom or anybody dealing with allergy and asthma, Tanya is the woman to go to. She's the person to listen to. Tanya, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Jennifer. I do feel like that we are kindred spirits, so it's an honor to be with you and your audience today. I look forward to the dialogue.
Awesome. Now, listen, I mentioned just now that you and I share a very similar background, and I would love for you just to kind of give the audience a brief look into the journey of how you got to where you are today.
Well, it really is a very sorted path that, quite honestly, probably begins on the playground in elementary and middle school. My mother says I've always had a strong sense of justice, that I always wanted to stand up for, anyone who was being mistreated or where I thought that things could be done differently. And so I was that middle child who was always seeking to stand up and make sure that people were protected. And I remember even at an early age, on the playground and in middle school, like standing up for the girls the mean girls were bullying. And so that's why I say it really does go a long way back. I think it is at the core who I am. But for me, my career actually started about 25 years ago in pharmaceutical and med device industry. And so I was in a variety of sales and marketing leadership roles in those organizations, small pharma, not big pharma. And then I actually transitioned into med device in 2005 when I actually had just recovered from cancer and decided that I wanted to step outside of traditional pharmaceutical sales and marketing leadership. And so I went into medical device, but entirely in that 15 years, my experience was in allergy, asthma, and related conditions like eczema. Okay. Along the same time, I'm having my children, my family. I'm the mom of 5 and the grandmother of 1. And they all have some form of those diseases. So I have, 2 that have asthma, 2 that have eczema. Everybody has environmental allergies, 1 that has life-threatening food allergies. So I often say it probably should have been on my dating profile, but it wasn't. And I married a highly atopic husband and then we had 5 beautiful children, but they all do have these conditions. So that's what actually led me to connecting with Allergy and Asthma Network and volunteering. And then almost 10 years ago, the president and founder of the organization was retiring after 28 years. And she and the board selected me as her successor. So I am the second leader in Allergy and Asthma Network's 37-year history.
Wow, that's amazing. So, what is it that the Allergy and Asthma Network do? What do they focus on? What is their main goal?
So we are a very traditional national grassroots patient education and patient advocacy organization. Again, we really aim to end the needless death and suffering due to these conditions through our 4 mission areas. The first is outreach, and that's all about driving awareness. We do a lot of traditional media, digital media, social media to drive awareness of these diseases. The second is education. And education is for patients, caregivers, and healthcare professionals. So we try to educate all of those different stakeholders and bring the patient voice forward, take the best scientific evidence, make it patient-friendly, and bring that patient voice back to the healthcare provider to really understand that we're people, not patients, and what we want out of our care. And then the third area is advocacy. So that is both state and federal legislative and regulatory policy, as well as a lot of payer policy work, because we all know that we can have the most innovative treatments out there, but if patients can't get access to them, it's all for naught. So we do a lot of work on payer policy as well. And then the final mission area for us is research. And research for us is not necessarily basic or clinical science focused. It is much more translational. So focus groups, advisory boards, key insights of the community that we serve, which now has grown to over 6 million people each and every year that directly are impacted by our programs and resources.
Well, that's quite a range of things that you do. So I can imagine how busy you must be. And I when I hear you saying that you're trying to connect all these different areas, I don't think that people really understand how this all works together. It's a lot, and I know that, like you said, a lot of moms come into motherhood not understanding anything about skin issues, eczemas, or allergies until it becomes personal. But here's the thing. There are so many moms out there that are experiencing this. And then what happens when, as an adult, suddenly you become allergic to something you don't understand? Why? And I have to say, I have two different friends who are suffering from right now from each of these. A friend whose child every year gets prescribed a stronger and stronger steroid cream for his eczema. Mm-hmm. Instead of understanding why, he's getting eczema. And then I have another friend who has literally over the course of probably 5 years become allergic to everything, and they don't understand why. They go to these different practitioners. They get all these allergy tests done. They see different things. They don't know what to do.
Right.
I mean, it's a big problem.
It's fascinating, right? Because allergy, immunology, and respiratory, right? Seemingly two different organ systems, shouldn't necessarily be related. And then you throw in the skin and, the gut, the GI system, and you think, oh, well, how could all of this actually manifest itself? Well, the truth is the immune system impacts every single organ, right? It's the underlying sort of iceberg that is there, or the glacier that is there when we only see the tip of the iceberg, perhaps in one or two symptom presentations. And so there's this concept called the allergy march in childhood, because it is genetics and environment. It takes those two components to actually manifest into these different conditions. So we've got an infant whose genetics are predisposed and sort of priming the pump for them to react. And then we throw them into an environment where, again, we're introducing new places, new people, new foods, new triggers that could potentially make their immune system react. And so what happens is that oftentimes in early childhood, that begins when we start with the skin. Right. So the skin is exposed. That's our largest organ, the skin. And we are exposed to different things through the skin in infancy.
Can I ask you a question about that real quick? I'm sorry to interrupt, but one of the things that I've noticed is people don't realize how much your skin absorbs things from the environment.
Yes.
And it is more than you would think. I mean, because they make medications specifically to be transdermal, to be introduced through the skin. Your skin is a huge sponge too, depending on what the chemical, what the, potential toxin is. So
it is. And as you say, your skin can be a barrier, or it can actually be a conduit to bringing that an item into your system and to reacting. So eczema is oftentimes the first symptom, if you will, skin conditions. And then when we start introducing new foods, sometimes people have, sensitivities or allergies to foods. And again, those can be mild, reactions that maybe is just a little GI upset, like an insensitivity. And then it can also be very severe, life-threatening allergic reactions, which you know, and I know, are anaphylaxis. And that, again, is super scary. I've experienced it with my own daughter just before she was 2 years old for the first time. And it changed my life. I mean,
Oh my God, how could it not?
I'll never forget the fear in her eyes and my spirit as on Thanksgiving Day, we rushed to the emergency room.
Oh my gosh.
So thankfully, again, I had enough information. I knew what to do. And we eventually got her the appropriate testing and then have been aware and prepared with our epinephrine on hand for now 17 years. But it was a challenge at first. And there's definitely been some scary moments along the way. So then after food allergy, oftentimes comes environmental allergies. You know, once we're in an environment for 2 or 3 seasons, like pollen seasons, that's when you usually have those allergic rhinitis or hay fever symptoms, stuffy nose, runny nose, itchy eyes, all of those great things that are quote unquote just allergies, but can really wreak havoc on someone's, sleep and ability to focus and do well in their life. And so after,
can I ask a question? Sorry, I'm so sorry. Why is it after 2 or 3 seasons in one place?
So this is the really odd thing about the immune system. So the first time you're exposed, you don't typically react. It's that second exposure. That first exposure is like priming the pump, and your body goes, okay, what is this? And then it's that second exposure, oftentimes, where your body goes, I think I've seen this before, but I don't like it. And so I'm going to, present with a symptom in response to it. And so it really becomes like a hyper-reactive, either skin, nose, gut, whatever the case may be. So anyway, a lot of children, that's around 4 or 5 when they first have those seasonal allergies. So infancy for eczema, 1 or 2 for food allergies, 4 or 5 for the nasal allergies. And then around that 5 to 7-year-old mark in the allergic march is also where oftentimes we begin to see asthma. And some people are very reluctant to label a child or diagnose a child with asthma, but oftentimes you'll have that history of like every time they get a cold, it goes to their chest, or they wheezed from time to time or had bronchitis or a cough as an infant. Well, oftentimes what that really is that they've had asthma from a very young age. And so again, those are the things in that atopic march, allergic march, and the different ways that they present themselves. And then you've got some people who are totally fine their entire lives and hit menopause and their system goes haywire. And that's when the allergy presents itself. Or when they move to a new city and all of a sudden have new allergic triggers. And that's when, again, they begin to manifest these symptoms. So it's very odd that our immune systems are there to protect us and adapt, but sometimes they just go a little wonky and they can affect so many different organs.
Wow, that's really interesting about, I know this is mostly for women when you talk about, menopause changes. I talk about hormone changes a lot. It's one of my favorite topics. And because it's so different from person to person, it can be completely different. And I always urge people to understand what their hormonal makeup is when they start experiencing those problems. I think one of the biggest surprises for me was how much testosterone women make varies wildly from person to person. And then I find that a lot of women don't even know that they make testosterone.
Use testosterone.
Yeah. Personally, I recently learned that I'm 50-50 estrogen testosterone.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to me. Versus, somebody else. And I've never really had any problems with allergies and so on and so forth, versus women who just completely convert all of their testosterone to estrogen. And, but then they're put on in menopause, they're put on, maybe more estrogen, which is actually not a great idea for those people. But when you say when all these hormonal changes then can affect like how your immune system is going to react to things, I think that that's something that probably women never think about.
It's so true. I mean, and again, I know because I'm at that stage of going
Okay.
through the midlife, and again, I've been surprised at how it can impact so many different organs just from the hormonal changes, and so it's an important topic that unfortunately we haven't been as open to discuss, and I think it's really important that we're having these kinds of conversations more readily.
I think so as well. And I'm just, I don't want to get onto a conversation about this, but I think it's important in terms of women need to understand that changes in their hormone and menstrual cycles reflects their internal health.
Yes.
And so when we have situations where I'm just using the COVID vaccines, for example, where you do have some sort of connection there, it's important to have conversations about that and to address it instead of just shrugging it off. Because yeah,
as women, we do that, right? We care for everybody else in our lives a lot of times, and yet we fail to look in the mirror and really take the same sort of level of care for ourselves. And so it's one of the reasons why I think, again, these kinds of conversations are so important because it's that time to sort of push pause, time out, and really stop and think like, how is my body changing? How is it affecting me? And how does that manifest? Because it may be on the physical health side, it may be on the mental health side. There's so many different components to comprehensive care that unfortunately are often overlooked.
Yeah, I feel like we should do a whole separate podcast on that sometime. I mean, it's just so important to me. Women's health is, I think, been sorely neglected, and we need to have these conversations more. But I want to move on to some of the things that you personally have been crusading for in your position as president and CEO of Allergy and Asthma Network. Can you tell me about some of the issues that you have found and have been working towards rectifying, in that space?
Yeah, unfortunately, our current healthcare system really does set the stage, and in the fee-for-service system, there's the opportunity for a lot of what I call bad actors, right? Mm-hmm. And so, in our space of allergy and asthma, that has played out in several different ways that we've really, as you said, as an organization, fought against and crusaded, and thankfully won some of these battles. One is in allergen immunotherapy, where there were a lot of sort of fly-by-night individuals that were doing allergen immunotherapy, altering people's immune system in primary care settings, in shopping malls. And it would make your skin crawl to see some of the settings because it was a very lucrative business. In fact, just today, there is a report from the Department of Justice where they caught a guy $40 million, $42 million in 4 years in fraudulent billing for allergen immunotherapy. And thankfully, he's now going to serve 10 years in prison and justice is served. But it's those kinds of things that we've been investigating and revealing. And actually, in 2018, we won a landmark antitrust lawsuit against one of these companies who said that we were, while we were advocating that we were doing that to keep them out of the market. And we said, no, we were doing it to protect patients and to protect the system. But we were sued for over $200 million. And thankfully, again, the jury found in our favor and all the appeals have gone in our favor. But it's been a trial. And then another area that I think we've really crusaded is around drug price transparency and what's called PBM, or pharmacy benefit manager reform. And so this is an area that I know, Jennifer.
Yeah, well, I'm very familiar with this.
None of us can forget the EpiPen scandal of 2016-17. And this was a time when we saw the price of epinephrine auto-injectors just continue to climb and climb and climb, where patients could not afford them. And I remember vividly going time and time again to the manufacturers and saying, like, this is insane. This is a product that has been on the market for 30 years. Why is the price escalating like this?
I think that's a huge point to make, Tanya, because I don't think that people realize, epinephrine in and of itself, it's been generic for, honestly, 50 years, maybe? Yeah. It costs pennies.
Yes, exactly. And yet with our system as it was at that time, there were all these middlemen. So you have the manufacturer, Mylan, who absolutely we hold accountable for their pricing strategy. But then you have these what's called PBM, pharmacy benefit managers, middlemen in between, that every time they would move it from point A to point B before it gets to you as the patient, they would mark it up and take another percentage and another percentage. And then on the back end, they would get rebates from the manufacturer for putting it higher on formulary and for saying this is our preferred drug. And so these middlemen, in the case of the Epi scandal, were actually getting 40 cents of every dollar of that $600 price tag.
Oh, that's crazy. Listen, and I'm not one to, I've worked for pharma companies. I know how they work. Most people who work in pharma companies are lovely people. But there are, like, as you said, some bad apples, bad actors, towards the top. But, at some point you even have to defend the fact that it's not even the pharma companies at that point getting the money, right? It's these middlemen. And
it's the system. The system is so flawed, Jennifer. And I think that's what we fought against, is to reform the system and to make sure that if those rebates happen, that they're coming back to you and I as the patient and not back to the insurance company as the middleman.
Well, and I think that's what people don't understand about why drug prices in America are so high compared to every other country. It's like, people joke about, on their annual vacation to Mexico, stocking up on drugs, but nobody wants to have the conversation of why is that? Why, can you buy, anything over the counter there for dollars?
And he's on the dollar.
Yeah. And you can't, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be prescription medications, but I'm just saying, like, why can't they be priced the same?
Yeah.
And that's why.
I think that there is a lot of movement toward what's called the International Pricing Index, and setting that kind of leveling the field across developed countries, probably 10 or 12 developed countries, so that, again, we still can help the low to middle income countries and offset some of that expense, but do it in a more uniform fashion rather than the US bearing the brunt, which is what happens right now. Definitely the US is responsible for most of the research and development in the pharmaceutical industry,
which is great.
Yep. It is fantastic, but at the same time, it should not be on the backs of patients in their out-of-pocket expense. And it shouldn't be that when you look at Forbes top 100, that the insurance providers and the PBMs are all in that top 100. Many pharma companies are in that top 100, and patients are really getting the shift of that.
Yeah.
And so that's what we've been fighting for. And a lot of that work happens at the state and federal legislative houses.
Well, that's amazing. I'm sure that that's eye-opening for a lot of people who don't understand how the drug industry works, how things are priced, how agreements are made in terms of what gets recommended, what doesn't. We could unpack that a lot more, but suffice to say, like you said, the system is broken. And I know some people do ask me occasionally, like, well, if all of these drugs are generic, then how do they make money on them? Because we all know that these businesses are in companies, they're in business to make money. Yeah. And just what they do is, they patent the actual delivery device of epinephrine. So it's never really the drug that's being patented at this point. It's the delivery device.
Oftentimes it is that delivery device. Yes.
So just in
In
case
that
anybody's
space,
wondering.
there's lots of innovation that's coming. I mean, I'm super excited because patients have said for a long time they want different routes of administration. And what is on the horizon in that space is actually an intranasal spray.
Yes, that's great.
And so, we think that will be in the market in the next year to 18 months, where rather than having to inject yourself with a needle, you actually just spray it up your nose and it has the same effect. So we're looking forward to that for patients because patients tell us they want other routes of administration.
Yes, and thank you for sharing that. And that's the positive side of pharmaceuticals, is they have the money to research and experiment and try to improve patient care. It's just unfortunate, sometimes.
A few bad apples spoil the bunch.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
So
it is. But we will keep fighting the good fight because it's the right thing to do for patients.
it is, and they have to have an advocate for them because this is tough to do on your own.
Well, and it's breaking the back of our country. I mean, it is now over 17% of our gross domestic product is healthcare. And no country can sustain that sort of cost. Of course, the government is the largest insurance provider in the country with Medicare and Medicaid subsidies. So we have to do something because, again, our children and our grandchildren, their welfare, their healthcare depends on it.
I agree. Now, segueing into exactly helping people, can you? I know you have a couple of programs specifically that you're working on. Can you tell me? I think one of them has to do with type 2 inflammation. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So, we were starting out talking about how all these diseases are connected, right? Well, that is because of the immune system. And what we now know is that asthma is not a single disease, it's actually a spectrum of disease. And there are patients that have what's called high type 2 inflammation. And those are the patients that usually respond the best to the mainstays of treatment, like inhaled corticosteroids. But there are also new targeted treatments for those patients called biologics. And so that's an injection that's once a month, and that sometimes can be given in the home, sometimes in the doctor's office, but is a way, again, to reduce that underlying inflammation that's causing the symptoms for those patients. So we have those now in atopic dermatitis, eczema, as well as moderate to severe asthma. So it's really a very exciting time. There's also conditions like nasal polyps that respond to these type 2 inflammation biologics. And we're also getting a lot of new insight and data coming around conditions like eosinophilic esophagitis and food allergy. So the field is very, very ripe for innovation and for new treatment options. Now, the challenge is that non T2 group. So we've got probably about half a dozen to, at this point, half a dozen approved treatments on the high T2 group. The low T2 or the non T2 group, unfortunately, there's less options, really no options. And so that's where we're working with researchers to try to better understand how to perhaps treat those patients.
Now, what are some of those non-T2 conditions?
So it's still asthma, it's still eczema. It's a different immune mechanism that's driving those.
And
COPD oftentimes has a lot of non-T2 phenotypes, is what it's called. The different types are called phenotypes. And so, and some of that may be, for example, obesity. We know that there's a higher rate of asthma non-T2 or low T2 and obese patients with asthma. We know that, again, if you have a smoking history, that you are more likely to have non-T2 asthma. So it's those sorts of things that help us to understand it's not a single disease, it's a spectrum of disease with a lot of different types, but often interrelated. Again, most patients have 2 or 3 of these conditions, not just one.
Right. So if you have somebody, and I'm like totally grilling you here for my friend. If you have somebody who suddenly seems to be allergic to everything, should they be going to get tested to see what type of inflammation it is? Who do they go to for that?
So absolutely. If you've got a friend or anyone you know who has, multiple things going on where all of a sudden they're reacting to different foods or environmental triggers or topical things, or they just think their immune system's gone haywire, absolutely they should see a board certified allergist immunologist. And I'm going to specify board certified because again, we talked about some of the, charlatans or quackery out there. So push to see a board certified allergist immunologist. And then when you get there, know that there are blood biomarker tests that can be done. So you can take a blood eosinophil count and know if you've got that type 2 inflammation going on in your system. And it's a simple blood draw. I mean, it's really nothing more than that. But it's the interpretation of that test and then kind of weeding out the history in the context of those biomarkers that really helps you to get to the right treatment.
Okay. That is really helpful, Tanya. Like I said, I think some people just have no idea even where to start. I think people honestly are a little distrustful of physicians at this point in time because just of everything that's gone on for the last 2 years, and they don't know what to believe anymore.
Who to trust. Yeah. And, that's actually one of the other projects that we've been working on called Not One More Life. This is a project where we've been going into communities of color and actually doing health screenings for those underserved. And so we do, the basic health screenings like blood pressure, weight, blood glucose, but we also do lung health screenings with spirometry and fractional exhaled nitric oxide, the breath test for lung health. And then we do some validated questionnaires to really help them understand, like, are you at risk for asthma and COPD? Do you already have it, but just haven't been diagnosed? And then we, on the back side of that, for those high-risk patients, actually offer 6 weeks of free telehealth coaching. And in that coach program, we have nurse practitioners, PAs, and respiratory therapists who coach them on self-management skills to increase their lung health outcomes.
Wow, that's amazing. Telehealth is becoming more and more available, I guess I should say, to a broader population. I think at first it was something that was a stopgap for a lot of people, but I mean, I don't know. Tell me your opinion. I think that it's the wave of the future, right?
Well, I hope it is, Jennifer. I mean, we saw such a rapid adoption in the first 6 months of the pandemic. People who had never done telehealth all of a sudden were doing telehealth. It actually became about 15% of total visit volume during the pandemic. And before that, it had been less than 2%. Now, here's the key. How did that happen? Number one, necessity breeds innovation. And so it was out of necessity. So we had telehealth parity. People were getting reimbursed. The doctors were getting reimbursed the same as in-person visits. What has happened, though, is that since things have gone back to somewhat the traditional delivery of healthcare, unfortunately, a lot of doctors have stopped offering telehealth visits. And why is that? It goes back to what we were talking about before. In a fee-for-service system, I, as a doctor, have incentives to see you in clinic. I can do more procedures. I can do more tests. I can make more money. And whether we like it or not, medicine, healthcare is a money business. And so I think that we've been really disappointed to see so many providers stop using telehealth because patients want it. I mean, remember, the difference here between it, you've got an hourly wage worker in an underserved community who either has to take off half a day and lose 4+ hours of wages to go to their doctor for a routine care visit, or they can do a 15-minute telehealth visit face-to-face, get the refills they need, and get back to work. And so
Amen. I'm all for that.
It really and truly, we have to, revamp our system to support that.
I agree. It does start, I think, with the physicians. As you said, I think we're already there as patients, right? We're ready. No one likes going to the doctor. Nobody likes taking off time and then sitting in a waiting room waiting to be seen. I mean, the whole experience it's just not
It's
that
not
great.
patient-centric. It just
Yeah.
isn't, right? And the truth is we're not patients, we're people. We wanna get back to our lives, right? I don't know about you, but I wanna be a mother, daughter, sister, friend, and, oh, yeah, by the way, I also live with this chronic condition. I don't wanna be defined by that condition, and I definitely don't want it to consume more of my day or my life than what it has to.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think, when people I wanna go back to, like, really how can you find a really good provider if you are I don't wanna say, like, well, some doctors are just better than others. They're more informed, they stay up to date on, what the research is showing. Um, you know, I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like, there's this whole group that is still super traditional. They still practice the way they were taught. And then there's, another group over here who understands now that, you know, allergy and skin is not just going and dealing with skin, right? It's all about
And it's all
understanding.
integrated.
It's all
Yeah.
integrated, and gut health is a huge component of it. So you have these two different kind of thought processes in terms of how to approach an allergy and asthma situation. How do people find somebody who is more aware of the integration?
That is the $1,000,000 question. How do you get to the right provider? I think it is by connecting with a patient advocacy organization, a community, looking at who is really providing that evidence-based approaches through their programs and things like that, and asking. I mean, we give referrals all the time, but what I would say is that it also takes an empowered patient to step back and realize that they are the driver on their healthcare bus, not their doctor. It's not their doctor's responsibility to get their best health outcome. It's their responsibility.
Yes, Tanya. Oh my gosh, it's music to my ears. One of the things that I try to promote on my podcast is, you have to honestly, become your own biologist. You have to get to know your body. You have to get to know your kids' bodies and understand and speak up,
Yes.
when you know that something doesn't work for you,
And
or
listen to your
ask
gut,
questions.
that
Yes.
intuition. I will say it's probably something that we dismiss far too often. But God gave us that gut instinct, that intuition for a purpose. And so I often say, if you feel like something's off, then it is, and go with that, and begin to question, and perhaps even go for a second opinion, or go a different direction for your care. But we are always at Allergy and Asthma Network here to help. We know the best of the best providers all across the country, and certainly in that space of allergy, immunology, pulmonology, we can always help. And then even in primary care, we've got a network of very well trained, hyper focused primary care providers that are committed to this space of allergy and asthma. And so, again, I think it's all about connecting with the right people, educating yourself, being informed and aware, and then acting in that empowered way to make sure that you're the one that's driving your healthcare bus.
Right. And you also mentioned, asking questions. And, I think that scares a lot of people. They feel like they don't have the right to question treatment decisions or treatment options. Um, how can people feel more empowered when they are visiting, with a specialist to ask questions, or even I don't want to say demand answers, but
But it all starts with knowing the right questions to ask. And we actually have developed some talk to your doctor guides about different conditions. We also have these little video vignettes on our website called Patient Learning Pathways that help to prompt you on what questions to have answered about various conditions. So I would say, knowing the questions is half the battle, and then having the courage to speak up, and to not. Here's the thing that really gets me. When a doctor walks in the room and says, how is your asthma, or how is your eczema? that's the wrong question. We started in the wrong place. It's all we need is for providers to change that question to, what's the one thing that you would like to do that you're not able to do? That we start to share a goal and an aim in managing that condition more effectively. And that starts us off on a shared decision making conversation about what really matters to me as a patient. Because my answer is probably going to be very different than your answer or someone else's.
Exactly. Because, even two people might have asthma, but like you said, oh my gosh, it could go so many different ways. Yeah. And what I want to do might be different from what you want to do. That's that's beautiful. And I love that you already have resources available for patients to not only educate themselves, but to teach them how to have a really great collaborative conversation, with their physician. So how can people find these resources, find out more about connecting with your network and all the good things that you have to offer?
Absolutely. Well, anyone can always go on the web to allergyasthmanetwork.org. Again, that's allergyasthmanetwork.org. And you'll see a wealth of resources. We have a COVID-19 information center. We have free webinars, free downloads of all sorts of guides called understanding guides, asthma, eczema, COPD and overlap conditions, allergies, all of these different free resources there at allergyasthmanetwork.org. You can also always call us at 1-800-878-4403. We do have a toll-free helpline that's available in both English and Spanish at 1-800-878-4403.
Great. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that we haven't covered today that you feel is essential knowledge for people who are suffering or have kids that are starting to show signs, of maybe having an allergy?
Well, the last parting word I would say is just again to realize that it starts with being aware, right? So you have to be aware of what good care looks like. You have to oftentimes be connected within a community that's supportive and that can help you to better understand and to have that education that's needed. Because these are complex conditions and your situation is different than mine. And so having a go-to source that's a trusted messenger is always so very important. And then finally, like we said before, just trust your gut and your instinct. When you feel like you're not getting the best level of care, or that you're not getting your questions answered, or that you're being rushed through an encounter with your provider, it's time to call a timeout and to say, okay, who do I need to go to? Where should I reconsider what I'm actually receiving here? Because you are not only the patient, but you're the consumer, and it's their job to actually meet your needs and to exceed your expectations. And I think, unfortunately, our healthcare system, again, has many ways it needs to be repaired, but it all starts at the individual level with the provider, with the patient, coming to the table, building a trusting, mutually beneficial, mutually respectful relationship to achieve the best health outcomes.
Okay. Wow, that was just a huge amount of information that I know so many moms and other folks are going to find extremely helpful today. I know I learned a couple of things from you, and I think that shows the importance of always be learning, about these conditions, and always be willing to have those conversations with your healthcare providers. So, thank you so much for coming today, Tanya. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was a great conversation. I look forward to the future.
Great. Take care.
You too.